This video is sponsored by Tabletop Ready Miniatures. Get your favorite minis at a discounted price by visiting tabletopreadyminiatures.com. Link in the description below. Hey Wargamers, today I want to do something a little different. Recently, Steve from Vanguard Tactics did a video talking about his worst game of 40k and using that as an example for why we need a comprehensive sportsmanship or conduct policy for the competitive scene, or some way of tracking player behavior other than wins, losses, and scores. So I think it was a really good video, a very well done presentation as to why that type of policy should be in place broadly across multiple different tournaments. And as part of that, I want to kind of talk about what my worst and also simultaneously one of the best games of 40k I've ever had. And this was, so it's kind of just an example of how things can be tricky and complicated, and just throwing some more perspectives into the ring of the cacophony that is people talking about their games. So, generally I try to be a very positive person, and this instance just has stuck with me as just a really disappointing one. So it was a few years ago. It was at a team tournament, nothing competitive, just something pretty casual, pretty fun. And I brought my Tyranids. So it wasn't a normal Invasive Wargaming tournament experience by any means. I had gone there with Gil. He was playing his Blood Angels. We were kind of star-crossed lovers in terms of 40k lore, and we went ahead and really just ate it. Game 1, Game 2 ate it as well. And Game 3 was the worst game that I've ever had at 40k. It started off as actually the opposite. It was a fantastic game after having two games that, just were kind of herky-jerky, and, there's, rules questions and just not a good jive during those games. Nothing against the players that we played against. They were very nice people. People that I play against, again, somewhat regularly. Very happy with those people. But they weren't, fantastic games because of that. The last game, though, we met our opposing players, and, handshakes, smiles, laughs. Their armies were exquisitely painted. And we just had a really good time for the first, 2 hours of the game. And then, everything was going great, I thought. There was a few comments about dice, bumping into models and stuff like that. But, overall, a very good game. And then we got to the last, half hour of the game or so, and, all of a sudden I picked up on one of my opponents getting really disgruntled. Things like, talking under his breath, moving things around, slamming things on the table. And keep in mind, like I said, these are beautiful models. And he's starting to be a little rough with them. And then, there's some things I came up with, like, he charged one of my Hive Tyrants, and I had another Hive Tyrant there that heroic intervened after that. And he wasn't familiar with how heroic interventions work. So we had to talk about that, and, I can understand that would be disappointing. I offered him the chance to take that back. If he didn't know about that rule, not a big deal. We can redo that phase and, make sure everyone's on the same page. Not a big deal at all, especially in that type of friendly environment. But then we had another, kind of shortly after that, he had used something to put some cultists, deep, basically outflank with some cultists. And he thought he had, gotten the leg up on me. Well, of course, Hive Tyrants can just turn around and fly back and take care of those cultists. So that's what they did. And upon that happening, I had killed most of the unit. Not very many were left, but he just picked up the whole thing, slammed them all together, crunched them up, and threw them on the floor. Literally, breaking these models that he had spent the whole time talking about, all the effort and love that he put into them. And he was just so frustrated that he was destroying his own creations. And it was ridiculous, right? Like, this is a grown man throwing a temper tantrum about his plastic soldiers. And that type of behavior is obviously unacceptable. It's not the type of experience that anyone should have in a tournament. And it was just an extremely disappointing thing. The guy, stormed off at the end of the game, barely could stay there for the entirety of the game, pacing, breathing heavy, talking under his breath, and just ruined what was a fantastic game up until the very end. Just like I said, it would have been probably one of the best games of 40K I ever played. Not because of the outcome of the game in terms of like points or anything like that, but because of the conversation, the camaraderie that we had. I was just having a blast talking to these guys, and then something just broke. So I think that is a really interesting example of how things can switch, at the drop of a hat. And I think there's a few things that are worth talking about here. One, of course, is not anyone's responsibility to make sure that their opponent has, the best game possible or, a fantastic time. But it is, kind of the gentleman's agreement that, we're playing this game together. We're not playing this game as two, disparate parties. We're playing it together. And so there is there's some accountability there for a player to, check in with their opponent, be like, is everything going okay? Is there anything that I need to be more clear about? Is there something that I can do to, not at my own expense, not anything that's going to ruin my game, but is there something that, I can do to help take you along on this fantastical voyage with me? And I thought I had been doing that, but clearly I missed something, right? People don't just totally flip out without warning. So it's likely that I missed some nonverbal cues at some point. And so paying attention to those types of things I think is valuable. But also, that type of behavior I think is another good example for why we need to have kind of a consistent track record across games and across events. If this was a one-off thing, that's unfortunate, but it's a one-time thing. It's not the end of the world. If this is the conduct every event, that's a different story. And so having a record of that can be useful, not only for TOs, but for players, and for the community in general. So, I think there's a lot of merit to that. Of course, we don't want to get to a place where people are weaponizing this or using this for politics or anything like that. But having just a simple, kind of yes/no record of did people have a positive or a negative experience with this person, I think would be an asset. So, overall, like I said, one of the best games I ever had that turned sour on a, really short time period. So let me know what your experiences are. Again, I'm, trying to make this a positive thing and talk about it to inform the overall conversation. I don't want to hear anything about, this specific person is a piece of garbage or anything like that. Talking more generally, try to be constructive. So let me know what you think in the comments below. And of course, happy wargaming. Hey everyone, this channel is made possible by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our community over there. Special thanks to Aaron Fox, Jim Bob, Scott Heater, Nick Steele, Jared Egler, Tao Oswald, Jackson, Stephen Cohen, Jake Johnson, Eric Jackson, Zealous Brimstone, Evan Wells, and Chris Kessler.